So thank you everyone for coming today for our webinar on building a culture of connection with Jess from LLUNA. This world is continuing to evolve, and her company is really trying to strengthen company culture and, get feedback from employees in a new and interesting way. So I'm sure everyone's been on a million Zooms, so just a reminder to mute yourself. Jess, thanks again for taking the time to talk to all of us. And then we are recording this, so in future emails that we send out, you can always catch the recording as well if you need to share it with someone else in your office. And then I'm sure Jess will be open to interruptions or questions. And if there's any sort of follow-up that's interesting for you, she's happy to connect as well. So there you go.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah. Thanks everyone for being here today. Really excited to talk about building a culture of connection. Throughout the presentation, I do have a couple of spots where I'll ask you to just drop an answer into the chat. I'm a big fan of the chat functionality in Zoom. So definitely feel free to interact. Also, if you want to unmute at any time and just ask a question, I am more than happy to pause and answer anything that might pop up. With that, I will dive in, and again, don't be shy. So my first chat question for you is, what is your biggest employee challenge right now? What challenge are you facing currently with your talent, and why do you think it is a challenge? If you wouldn't mind, spend a couple seconds, just drop your thoughts into the chat box, and this will help kind of tee up where we take the conversation today. And who's going to be the brave person to respond first?
I'm working on a response.
Okay. Quiet quitters, the dreaded. Finding new talent, culture fit. Yep, going from 100% remote to hybrid, the transition back. Competition will offer remote, trying to navigate returning to the office and growing a hybrid team, lack of space, hoteling, isolating employees with virtual, yes, wanting to work remote all the time, finding appropriate employee, yeah. Return from remote. This is a big theme, especially right now. Many organizations had this September timeframe as a marker for their return to office policies going into effect, and certainly a challenge as employees are sort of changing up their routines. Feel free to continue to drop some thoughts in there, but I'll keep moving forward here. So the focus of this conversation, again, on building a culture of connection, and connection has not ever been more important considering the fact that we are working in hybrid and remote environments. So the way in which we need to connect now has evolved. And so we'll unpack some of that as we go through the conversation. And again, please don't hesitate to jump in. So real quick about me, my name is Jess Podgajny. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LLUNA. LLUNA is what we call the team operating system for hybrid and remote organizations. And it really is meant to cultivate connection. So you could say I am all about connection, all about data-driven belonging in organizations. And really that technology has been built on a career of working with people and how to motivate people, whether it was in the chief people officer seat or working as a consultant with global organizations to try to figure out how to navigate change or reorg or better connect strategy to individual team members' motivations. So this is very much core to the last 2 decades or so of work experience, and a topic I am incredibly passionate about. So I want to first start the conversation with, like, what is culture? What is workplace culture? So this is a question. Feel free to drop something in the chat. Like, when you think about culture, what comes to mind for you? Is there, and I put some funny pictures on the screen. I see some smiles there. So, but what do you think it is? How would you define it, or what would you say is important to culture? And you could also jump in and talk live if you'd like to as well. All right. No, everyone's being shy. Okay, the way employees work together and get along with each other. I like that. Thank you, Lisa. So when I talk about culture, and the way that I typically approach this definition is to break it down into a formula. So not quite exactly what you see on these slides, but more what you see on this slide. So culture equals purpose plus values plus behaviors. And intentionally, this slide is very black and white. There's not a fancy picture. There's not a foosball table. Culture at its core is, what's the purpose of the organization and how do you get people motivated by that? What are the values that you utilize to make your decisions as a business and kind of set a frame for how you want people to engage with work in your organization? Sarah put in there, people coming in for culture fit. So you're going to want to look for people that have similar types of values or additive traits that will help to support and enable your values. And then behaviors are the expectations of how we're going to work. How are we going to live these values and support the purpose? And what this looks like in practicality, I have a couple examples for you. This one is Southwest Airlines. So you can see across the top of the slide, purpose. Their purpose is to connect people to what's important in their lives through air travel. Then they have this broken down into live the Southwest way and work the Southwest way. But what you see in bold, the 6 bolded categories are their values: warrior spirit, servant's heart, fun-loving attitude, etc. And then the bullets underneath of those are the behaviors they expect from everyone in the organization. And so this defines their culture. This is how people show up into their organization every day. And the framing that they provide, or culture framework that they provide to help people understand what it means to be a part of the organization. So purpose, values, and behaviors. Second example here is my own organization. Oops, let's jump back there. And you can see here, LLUNA's purpose: to create meaningful connections. On the right-hand side of the slide here, you have our values, and these spell the word fresh. So we always are talking about our fresh values. And then the behaviors that support the values. This looks different than what Southwest has. They don't all need to look the same, but it's the combination of these 3 elements that really set the foundation for your culture. Any questions about that? Comments? All right, I'll keep going. Feel free to drop it in if you do. All right, so then, I'm so sorry, my mouse is not behaving today. So, question for everyone: what do you think is the most valuable aspect of your culture? Like, what's the thing that you would say makes you unique, or is part of how you attract talent, or why you retain talent? What is that valuable aspect. And it doesn't have to be one of the big buckets. You could speak to a specific value or specific behavior or your purpose. But if you don't mind, share some of the things that you think might be most valuable. Empathy towards clients. As a customer, Michael Whitcraft, I feel that. So yeah, I think that is really valuable for your culture. Family atmosphere with half-day Fridays. Yes. Trust. It's a good one. Flexibility, caring about employees' personal lives. Flexible schedule, work-life balance, yes. And that can show up in different ways. So work-life balance certainly doesn't mean the same thing to everyone, but the fact that your organization prioritizes that means that you're thinking in that people-first manner. Really good one. Can-do attitude, I love that. Can get it done. That's really like galvanizing, keeps people connected. Thank you everyone for sharing. So why is a culture of connection important? And I'll tie this back to maybe some of the things that you shared just now in the chat, but when connection's lacking, employees lose trust. So we had someone who said trust was so important. We lose trust because we're not connected. In some of our biggest challenges, one of you shared that people are feeling isolated. So when you're isolated, you're disconnected, you're feeling like you don't necessarily know everything that's going on, you start to lose trust in what's happening because it's not as transparent or visible to you. Teams lose productivity. Research shows that teams that are connected and cultivate that those close bonds are more productive than teams who aren't well connected or well bonded. Managers lose time. Many of you might be able to relate to that revolving door of either resignations or questions or can I do this? Can I do this? Because there isn't that tight communication or alignment. And then research also shows us that organizations lose innovation. So additionally, when people don't feel connection, there's a stronger intention to quit. There is a significantly higher likelihood that people will be looking for a new job. And this stat really struck me. So 43% of US workers don't feel a sense of connection to their coworkers. And that is leading to maybe some of the challenges that we're facing as we're trying to attract and retain great talent in our organizations. So let's jump here. Some more information for you. These strong workplace relationships matter to productivity, retention, and innovation. So when you are connected, when you're on a well-connected team where you have good relationships, high trust, you know your colleagues and you feel excited to work with them, there's a 56% increase in job performance. There's also a 50% reduction in turnover. So for many of you on the line, I probably don't need to remind you that turnover is incredibly expensive. It will cost you anywhere from 50% to 200% of an employee's salary to replace them. So when you think about reducing turnover by 50%, that actually saves you a significant amount of time and money. And then this quote here from a researcher at Microsoft. Microsoft has done a significant amount of research in the last 2 years in the pandemic era about connection, about cultivating belonging inside organizations, and how that lack of connection leads to a lack of innovation, which of course is really important to many of our organizations as we're iterating on products, ideas, processes, offerings, ways to engage with customers, etc. So I think it sounds like many of you are hybrid, but if you wouldn't mind, one more quick poll for you. Where are you in terms of policy right now? Are you fully back in the office? Are you hybrid? Are you fully remote? What's your current location? Okay, fully in the office, remote with, yep. hybrid. Yeah, in person 100%, or a manufacturer. Yeah, Andy, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. So I'd say mostly hybrid, but some are fully back in the office and some are fully remote. And as I go through the next few slides, I'm going to share some ideas on ways to build greater connection in your teams. But don't be shy if I don't hit on what it might look like in your particular setting. Like raise your hand or call out, and we can certainly dig into more ideas specific to your scenario. To the next slide. So I have 5 actions for you that will help in building connection at work or in the workplace or for your organization, really creating that culture of connection. And so the first one here is big and broad, and it is build trust every day. And so trust is this weird thing. Like, we talk about it like we know exactly what it is, but it's often like, well, like, doesn't that just take time? Or isn't that, something that like I earn? And it might be different with each person. And I love this definition from a couple of researchers that published this visual in Harvard Business Review. That trust is really the triangulation of these 3 things. So the first one being authenticity. So I feel like I can experience the real you. And so this is, coming from your perspective. You need to have that authenticity. And then empathy. So I believe you care about me and my success. So I'm going to feel like I can trust you if I think that you care about me. And the third piece is the logic that, like, I know you can do it and your reasoning and judgment are sound. So I'm trusting you because I know you can do it. And so if you think about it in these 3 ways, authenticity, empathy, and logic, reflect on your own organization and maybe what's in place for people to start to experience this with each other. So on a team or even in a reporting structure, can people be authentic? Do people have empathy for one another, and feel like you have their back and they have yours? And do you have trust or faith or an opinion that they can actually get the work done? And if the answer is no to any of those, then what people need to do is reflect on, like, well, why don't, and for the logic one is, I think, probably the hardest one. I know you can do it. Someone's new to the organization. You don't necessarily know that they can do it, but you hired them for a reason. So, and are you projecting to them that you think they can do it? Or are you projecting to them that you think they can't do it? And so a simple reframing here can help build trust really quickly. But thinking about it in this way is also really valuable from a leadership standpoint, how you're leading and making sure that the people on your team are experiencing this from you. And it really starts there. So that's the first big action I would impart upon you about connection. And then the second one here is onboarding with intention. So onboarding is a natural part of the process of hiring a new team member. What do you have in place to make them feel really well connected in that very first day? So in any setting, we can set up day 1 meet and greets, whether they're virtual or in person. We can assign buddies. So someone we think might be of similar skill sets or similar interests or a good fit, a good match for this new hire. Creating new hire profiles, or in LLUNA's world, we call it a POP, a personal operating profile, to introduce new team members and helping them assimilate really quickly to the team. And then having leaders reach out to new hires to reinforce culture and that the purpose of the organization, but how it connects to that individual's job. I can't tell you in my past experience and current experience how far it goes when the CEO or the COO or some senior leader in an organization reaches out to that new person, quick text message, quick phone call, and just says, welcome, I'm so glad you're here. It's your first day. I just want to remind you, here's what we're all about as an organization. And I can't wait to better understand and see how you're going to add additional value into the organization based on your role. So onboarding has lots and lots and lots of components, and these are just a couple of ideas maybe to get your wheels turning about ways you can make that process really from day one feel like a very connected and approachable place for new people joining the organization. And I'll just say, those of you in remote settings, hiring and onboarding someone remotely can feel like a little bit awkward. Like you're like, okay, so I've never met you in person. I see just the 2D version of you. And I am not, 100% certain like what you're all about right now. So the guidance there is through some of the suggestions on the slide, but maybe some other things. Ask questions, get to understand people, and not just on that like superficial level, like what did you do, where did you work before, and what are you doing now, but more like, what motivates you about coming to work, and what would you say are your key skills? What's your favorite type of work to be focused on? All of these things are really powerful when you start to understand them, and can also help people feel more connected to others on the team. Don't hesitate to again, drop your comments in the chat, or just call out if you have any questions. All right, so action number 3, design team rituals. So create repeatable actions that forge connections, understanding, belonging, and productivity. And you might have some of these in place already, and they might be exactly the right things. But if you're feeling like you have more silos on your team than before, or that it's harder to have a cohesive, connected culture, some of these ideas might help. So monthly team recognition or spotlight. We often forget that a simple thank you, or like, hey, just to like showcase this person's current work or progress, we forget how incredible that feels to individuals. So think about building in like a monthly team recognition process. Peer recognition can be really powerful, or maybe you have you pick one person and you just spotlight like something awesome that they did, and maybe a couple of like fun facts about them, to make sure that you're amplifying the talent on your team, really celebrating what they're bringing to your organization. Meeting starters and check-ins. I love this one. It's really simple. It takes a couple of minutes at the beginning of any meeting. So if you hold team meetings, or if within your organization, you could roll this out and say, at the beginning of every meeting, we want you to do a quick check-in. Like one that I'm fond of is called the MEP check-in. So you say, hi, my name's Jess Podgajny. I am checking into this meeting, and here's how I am mentally, emotionally, and physically. And you'd be surprised at sometimes what people share and how therapeutic it can be. Another great one is pick one person on either the screen or to your left or right, and say something that you really admire about them. So it helps kind of think about always boosting up your team, celebrating what they're bringing to the organization, but also checking in with them on more than just a work level. Kind of, how are you doing as a whole person? Boundary setting, so really powerful, giving people permission to be unavailable. And maybe for your company, it's the same time for everyone, or maybe you get really specific and ask people to tell you, like, what's your preferred unavailable time? It's part of professional maturity to know that often or sometimes you might have to work during that preferred unavailable time, but at least having the opportunity to share that you would, maybe between 5 and 8 is really tough for you because you've got young kids and you need to do dinner and bedtime, and you can, jump back into things later in the day. Or maybe early in the morning, you're training for a triathlon and that's when you need to be working out. Like, the ability to set those boundaries helps you feel supported, but also helps employees feel more connected, engaged, and trusting of the way in which they can get their work done. And then the last one here is just like kind of quarterly update meetings or check-in meetings. So with your whole organization, sometimes these are called all hands meetings, or maybe it's with different departmental groups, but using that as an opportunity to kind of check in on where people are, but also how they've evolved and how they want to continue to evolve. So asking, like, what are the big goals that we have ahead of us? What are the big goals that we've accomplished? And how are we doing right now? Like, do we feel like we're in a really good rhythm, or do we feel like we need to adjust some things? So those quarterly updates or tune-ups almost can be incredibly powerful to keep work moving forward in a productive way, but taking that intentional pause to reflect on anything that might need adjustments. I'll also share that in our research and data, we see that there's seasonality to people's needs and preferences just as an employee in an organization. So during the summer, people prefer those summer Fridays or a compressed work week. They tend to have more time off. During the fall, especially right now, it's sort of this crazy time with back to school. So there tends to be lots of like, I need to go to this thing, so I need to cut out early or come late. And so checking in seasonally to be like, what do we have going on from a work standpoint? And then what does everyone need in life to be best supported can be really powerful as well. Action number 4. So prioritize the people. I cannot say this loudly enough. And if I yelled in the office I was in right now, someone would probably come in and check on me. So I won't yell it, but I do want to scream it from the rafters. Prioritize the people. The human side of business has never been more critical. We used to be on a hamster wheel. We used to be robots. We were born out of a traditional manufacturing era where it was, we're all going to kind of go in and do the same job, and we're going to get it done during these hours, and then we're going to disconnect and then go live our life. And that has notably changed. And I would argue it's even changed inside manufacturing organizations. So think about how you can build flexibility into your workplace policies and how you can focus on outcomes, not hours. There is a lot of very charged opinions when it comes to these two statements. So building flexibility into workplace policies. Some of you mentioned this return to office transition has been a challenge. So you were in office probably fully, then you went fully remote during pandemic. Now you're in some hybrid scenario and people aren't happy. This is very common at the moment. And my challenge to you, depending on your role in the organization, is to think about how you can operate within a framework. Perhaps it's that 3 days back in the office, 2 days remote framework, but then build in flexibility at the team level. So, for periods of time, a team might have really, really peak periods where they're incredibly busy, that it's helpful for them to be in the office as much as possible. And then there might be 1 month out of the year where they're more slow. Maybe during that month, that team can decide we're going to be remote 4 days a week, or we're going to be fully remote for that 1 month of the year. And the rest of the year will be 3 days in the office. Just a little bit of flexibility and accommodation for what people are saying perhaps they want goes a really, really long way. And so it doesn't have to be this big holistic policy. It can be small tweaks or like minor exceptions for discrete periods of time. to help people feel like they're at least feeling heard. And then focusing on outcomes, not hours. So what do you expect people to get done in a week, and are they getting it done? And if they are, then we need to stop focusing on like, well, but like, is their dot turning yellow, or are they offline right now? It needs to be, well, their work is done. So they should disconnect, they should recharge. And frankly, then they're going to come back to me even better than if I just had them sitting in front of the laptop pretending that they were doing something. They're going to be more frustrated, less recharged, and less trusting and inclined to want to work harder in the long run. So focus on outcomes wherever possible. And that can be like really specific on the individual job level. It can be specific to the team level, and it can be organizational as well. So organizationally, what are you trying to accomplish? What are the outcomes you expect over a given period of time, a quarter, 6 months, year, and then break that down to the teams that are delivering that work. And then make sure that's where your focus is, and not on you weren't at your desk, or you left early, or whatever the scenario might be. The world is moving to outcomes, not hours. And my fifth action here for you is to lean into leaders. So how are you investing in your managers? Do they know how to lead? Are they trained in your values, your culture, your policies? Do they have enough time to spend with employees, or do they have a 40-hour a day job or 40-hour a week job, and then they're supposed to lead on top of that? And then do they know how to grow and develop others? If you're questioning the answer to any one of these, I would challenge you to lean into your leaders. Figure out how you can give them the tools, the resources, the training to make them feel more empowered to better lead the people in your organization. The work that is happening right now, especially in distributed working environments, hybrid and remote, the work that's happening right now starts and ends with your managers. They are the ones that are going to either make it happen or where the breakdown happens. So people are looking for new jobs most often because they don't want to work on a team. They don't want to work on the team. They don't feel connected. They don't feel empowered by their manager. They don't feel like their manager is supportive of them. And you really want to focus on how do you make your managers as strong as they could possibly be, equipping them with all the right training and tools. Okay, so in the chat, share one thing. Those are my 5 actions, 5 takeaways. Share one thing that struck you as we were going through this dialogue that maybe you could put into action as a result of this section. Anything that bubbled to the top. Training leaders and values. Yep. Thanks, Kristen. Really good one. Creative on schedules. Yep. Outcomes, not hours. Love it. Yeah. Adjusting for like peak periods or slow periods. Absolutely. Yep. Outcomes. Awesome. I'm going to open it up for questions, any other comments, anything else you want to dig into. This QR code will link you to all my contact information. I have a podcast, my website. You can check everything out if you want to take a snap of the screen. Would love for everyone to connect on LinkedIn and certainly reach out. But I'd love to continue the discussion now. If anyone wants to unmute and ask any questions, happy to field them.
Jess?
Really great question. There's so much we could go into here. I think that there's maybe two things to remember. One is that people want flexibility. And that is a really big, broad, and sort of nebulous word because it means something different to every person. So flexibility means something different to every person. And then the second thing that I'll share is that whatever the flexibility is that somebody wants, it will change. So this is part of like the quicksand we often feel like we're on as employers, because like, wait, they just said they want this thing, and now we're 6 months later, they're telling me they want a different thing. So I think like a good framing for flexibility from an organizational standpoint is here are our points of view. This is how we feel about work and how we want work to get done. But we also want to be adaptable and meet the needs of our team whenever possible. And sometimes it's hard to even know what people want really. Through the Team OS technology, we use those personal operating profiles and then these team dashboards to understand like what are people really wanting right now, and then how are they changing over time. But you might survey the team periodically, just pulse them with a couple of questions. And if you already have that information, kind of bringing me back to this talent acquisition point, if you know generally what your people are wanting, whether or not you can offer it, I would just challenge you to get creative. And that is where employees are feeling more energized about joining companies right now. It's the companies that are saying, we're a test and learn culture. We're going to test this, we're going to try it, we're going to see what works, and then we're going to keep it or toss it, depending on the effectiveness. There's not a silver bullet per se on the TA side. I do think that the organizations that are offering hybrid work or the choice to go fully remote, even for periods of time, are highly sought after. So like work location is a big deal. 4-day work week is coming. I don't know how fast it will get here, but it is coming. And the organizations right now that are dabbling with that, and Sarah, you mentioned you already do half-day Fridays. The 4.5-day work week is incredibly empowering for employees. And we've seen most people prefer that even over the 4-day. So, and that's a compression. So that's like, you still technically have your 40 hours or all the outcomes you're expected to deliver in that week, but you do it in 4.5 days instead of in 5 days. The true 4-day work week is a 32-hour week. And that is what we are marching towards. I think we're probably a few years away, but large organizations will begin adopting that, and it'll be difficult to compete with. So I think thinking proactively now about how you can offer flexibility, even if it is compressing on the work days, really important. And then I think generally like well-being has become the topic where people are recognizing that, you know, we all have struggled mentally in some way, shape, or form over the last few years. So what are organizations able to do from a well-being standpoint? It can be as simple as, you know, 1 day a quarter that the whole company shuts down for a kind of mental health day. It could be a half day. It doesn't have to be tons of time or this really big expensive thing. They can be simple things that are implemented that are signals externally as you're hiring, and then internally as a retention tool to get people really thinking about, wow, my company cares about me. They want me to be well. They want me to go, you know, take that hike or go do that meditation. So anything around well-being, and it doesn't have to be time off either. Some people are offering choices around like the Calm app or a certain number of dollars per month towards a gym membership or volunteer days off. Any of these are helpful ways to help support people in their total well-being. Thanks, Kristen. What else? One additional thing I'll call out while we're waiting to see if anyone has any more questions is around professional development. in a virtual environment, so in a remote environment, even in a hybrid environment, and I would say most especially for Gen Z employees, it's really difficult to know what you're missing. So, many of us likely worked in an office and were trained by someone day to day, face to face. We sort of picked up things by osmosis even. And Gen Z wants the flexibility. They want to work remotely or at least in a hybrid environment, but their professional development will suffer as a result. And there are ways to solve for that, and even in a remote and hybrid environment, but it takes intention. So focus on, what do you have in place? How do you want your team to develop? What opportunities can you create for people to develop in your organization? That's a major perk and benefit that you can offer. And again, some of this can be really low-hanging fruit. So matching people with a mentor when they get started, or say 6 months into their tenure with the organization, you match them up with someone who has skills that they're aspiring to also have. You can have like coffee chats with senior leaders. Again, this can be over Zoom, it could be in person, but where maybe the CEO or a senior executive in your organization is just kind of talking about their career journey and how they got to where they are. Maybe you are spotlighting kind of different career paths and doing that over lunch and learn settings, but helping people make them aware, continually aware of how else you can learn, how else you can grow, and making that part of your ongoing dialogues as within your company, really helpful for how people will remain engaged and wanting to stay with your organization or be drawn into it, knowing what professional development you offer. And every industry will be different. I mean, it might be like training on a new skill or a new machine or a new, office process. It could be any of those things, but giving people the opportunity to either raise their hand or offering those choices up is really beneficial.
And Jess, I'll just jump in too, because I think I did this with a group of employees here and with some stuff, and I wasn't quite sure where to go. And just, I think doing a survey to your employees on different options you're looking at and just seeing giving them a little bit of a say in what direction you go in. Like, I thought I knew my employees pretty well and what they would want. And then I was in some ways pleasantly surprised or it helped reaffirm what I thought was important to them by having them do these surveys. And they also felt, that they valued me asking their opinion on some things as well. So,
yeah. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And don't forget to use the talent you already have. Like there are probably tons of people on your team that have great experience or could tell a really interesting story about their career path, or that could share maybe a time that they were torn between going one direction or another, and then how they ended up where they are. And all of that is just like, it's eye-opening. And even if it's not development in and of itself, it's helping people understand how it could work. Oops. This slide is just a number of additional resources. I'll make sure we send these slides out as a follow-up, but some additional good resources that are out there around connection, belonging, what's happening currently in the workplace. And we'll make sure that you get this PowerPoint. I want to wait and make sure there's no additional comments before we wrap up. Anybody have any other burning questions? All right, Sarah, I think maybe we'll give everybody 8 minutes back in their day.
Yeah, no, that's, thank you, Jess, for your time and your ideas. And, Jess does a lot of interesting work to, keep companies and their culture growing and